So what do you think Warren Buffett would say if you asked him for some retirement advice? Well, obviously Warren Buffett's a pretty rich guy. Seems like he knows how to make money and how to be good with his money. So obviously he's probably got some pretty good pearls of wisdom to share with people. So I thought I'd do a little research because obviously Warren Buffett's a pretty good guy. He's made billions and billions of dollars for himself and other people, and that's because he follows some very simple strategies that most of us overlook or try to overcomplicate. And that was one of the things I found out when we talked about it, when I looked it up, is that he's known for saying something along the lines of people overcomplicate picking stocks and doing the stock market. And if I was to bet on stockbrokers or monkeys, if you took out the fees, I'd bet on the monkeys all day long, because monkeys throwing darts at a dartboard are just as efficient at picking stocks. So he's very much into, let's make it simple and easy that anybody can use, and then use basic principles of the market and how it's valued and how it changes. So for the pearls of wisdom, the first thing that he recommends, and I've seen this a lot of people, and I've mentioned it here on the channel as well, is that you need to have a purpose when you go into retirement. If you don't have a purpose, you're going to be lost. And I think that's what happens when you lose your job or change jobs, is that your identity is gone, and that affects your purpose, and it affects your will to live. And he says without purpose, people succumb to illness because you're just basically sitting around waiting to die. And I've heard and seen that before as well, is that people that aren't driven to do something else end up doing nothing. And doing nothing is a surefire way to find the grave quick. And we don't want that. None of us want that. And I wouldn't ask that for anybody. So what it means for me is that, and what he says is that you need to break it down. Instead of using it as the winding down period of your life and then waiting for it to end, you need to revitalize it with a new purpose that involves you sharing or doing things that you have passion about, or helping others or whatever, and then use that instead and just call it the next phase of your life. All right, the second thing I'd like to talk about that he's a firm believer is, don't risk your money and your financial security for family. Now, he's not saying to abandon your family, but you should never put forth family in front of your retirement and your life and what's left of your life. That money you need it more than they need it. And I understand helping people, and if you're in a position where you have the extra money, that's one thing. But a lot of people are so busy taking care of others and other people in their family that don't do well or don't take their own first steps. They end up dwindling away their own. So unless you have a job or income sources that can replenish that gifting that you're trying to do, don't do it, and save it for yourself. And then when there's a time to give that money away, is at the end periods of your life, when you know you have enough, and then you can set that up to do something for those people at that time, maybe to help them pay off school debt or whatever it might be. That's the time to do it, not while you're still trying to survive and retire and pay your own bills. All right, so that next step is that Warren's a huge believer in using the S&P. It's really hard to beat the S&P 500 when it comes to picking a portfolio, and he recommends using index fund in retirement, and even up to 90% of your money in it, because if you're planning to live 20 or 30 or 40 years, you still have time for that market to have a bad year and recoup, especially if you don't need the money specifically and you're not taking withdrawals on it specifically to fund your everyday income life, right? That the money you need every month to pay bills. So stocks are still one of the most viable options, and you still have plenty of time to recover. So that's why it's hard to beat the S&P over time, and that's why he's a huge fan of that. And a lot of financial investors say that that's not a great way to go. They're not huge. It seems to me that Warren Buffett is one of those guys, you either love his philosophies or you don't like him at all. When it comes to financial planners, it seems that they're not big fans of it, but that's also because they're fee funded. Most of them, they make money by charging fees. And so, of course, they want to be able to pick the stock and pick the different portfolios versus just keeping it simple and going with the S&P 500 index and letting it ride. Now, whether you want to do 60, 80, 90% or not, that's completely up to you and based on your life expectancies, your long-term goals. Do you have money you can put aside just to play that way and just let it ride out and compound still? And if not, you don't want to be panicking and worrying about it. So, you may want to keep the percentages different. You may want to go with a 50-50 split. But if there's nothing wrong with taking a portion and putting, say $100,000 or something into an S&P index fund and letting it ride and see how it does. Especially if you don't need it, and I would again say that's like extra cash that you have that you don't have a purpose for yet, aside from just to watch it grow a little bit. So anyway, I'm not a financial planner, of course. I always say this because I'm not an expert. I just try to use simple math, basic information, try to gather and share. So I'm not giving you financial advice. Seek out your financial advice from your certified financial planner. But some of this stuff is not rocket science. It should be fifth grade math to figure out that if I can make an 8 or 10% return every time versus taking my chances with a tech stock or something crazy, then why wouldn't I go with the thing that's a little bit more sure and has a better track record? Anyway, I appreciate your time. Like, comment. I appreciate those things and every one of you. And we'll see you next time.